back to the third episode of the Feel Good Podcast, a podcast bringing you all the juicy marketing of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, brought to you by skilled experts coming together to share our knowledge and experience on marketing trends, the latest ones at that. And back for a third time is me. I'm Emily Knowles, the account coordinator for Clementine Creative Agency, an agency located on the Marietta Square that provides our clients with a slew of creative services, helping them to meet their needs and goals through marketing. And today I'm joined with the co-founder and project manager of Clementine Creative Agency, Jennifer Nelson.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Virtually. Nice to virtually see you.
Yeah. We're back for a third time. You know, in our first episode, we talked a little bit on TikTok and its purpose in marketing with social media. Second episode, we talked about website development, but now we have you for the third time. So
yep. Who could have foreseen that we would be doing this quite this way? But things have certainly changed a little bit lately. So
yeah,
now is the time to adapt.
You can see that our background is not our usual accent brick wall or our bowl of bright neon oranges in front of us. We've kind of had to, like the rest of the world, adapt to the ever-changing, unforeseen circumstances of COVID-19, which means working from home, and that also means podcasting from home. So it's a little bit what our setup is right now.
Yep, this is what we're doing, and this is what I think most everyone else out there is doing, and certainly it's changed the way that we work, and it's changed the way that we work with our clients and the way that our clients are doing business. So I think this is probably a pretty familiar experience for everybody out there. So
right, and this just allows us to do our part in being safe and keeping our distance. And so, I mean, I'm sure many people listening or watching can speak that they also are doing this in their work environment. So it shouldn't look too different. But from a podcast standpoint, it's different from our first two episodes.
It is that, but it is reflective of the times. So
that's true. So we actually have not only adjusted from working from home, from a physical standpoint, but as an agency, we've had to take on new approaches as well. So we've kind of had to take a look at our clients and our messaging as an agency and for our clients and how we're kind of, adapting to what we're sharing and what is the right idea and what should be conveyed from a sensitive standpoint, from a smart standpoint, from a strategic standpoint. And that's kind of an overview of the three approaches that we have constantly been taking over the past few months and have applied to our clients as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now is obviously it's a time of adaptation on a lot of different fronts. This pandemic has impacted millions of people worldwide. It's impacted the way that we're living every day, and everyone, doing their part and staying at home and, self-isolating and quarantining and all of those things that have become like everyday words, which is so strange and surreal in a lot of ways. But here we are. But I think it certainly is also a time of adaptation. On the marketing front, we know that we are still out there doing work for our clients. We know that other businesses are still out there trying to do business, trying to push their marketing initiatives forward, or at least to adapt them to what's appropriate for this new environment that we've suddenly found ourselves in.
Right.
So, what I think has been interesting about it from a marketing perspective is that, marketing is a discipline, if you will, or a practice that's really always been about people. I mean, that is fundamentally what marketing is. Marketing is that activity or process by which you're communicating with and delivering whatever it is you're offering to the people that are your customers. So it is and should always be a people-centered business. But this recent crisis, I think, has really brought to light, or reminded all of us in a very strong way that it's about people more than it's about your brand or your product or your individual business. It really is about focusing on the people that you're trying to reach and what they're going through right now and adjusting your marketing plans and communication plans accordingly.
Absolutely. And I think it's a time for people to understand that if they've always had one way of approaching their message and their brand and how they convey it to people, it might be time to reevaluate it and come from a more authentic, sensitive standpoint than what they're used to doing. You don't want to take away from your creativity, but you do want to take a look at what you're putting out there as far as your branding and messaging goes.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned sort of the three main points that we've sort of been hitting on in terms of navigating, ourselves and really, the work that we're doing for clients and the communication work that we're doing for folks. through this crisis. And I think the first and foremost point about that is be sensitive. We have to recognize the reality of what's going on right now, recognize the impact that it has had on so many people and on their livelihoods, on other people's businesses, and be realistic about that. But you're right, there is an element there of authenticity that needs to be there, of sincerity that needs to be there. I saw a thread being passed around online that basically said, I love how all these ads have gone from buy our stuff to in these challenging times, buy our stuff.
Right. A little bit of a spin on it to make sure you're acknowledging what's going on, but at the end of the day, we're trying to sell you something.
Right. And I think that's not exactly what we're going for. We would hope to really reflect honestly on what is happening, how it's impacting people, and meet them where they are in that experience. Be honest about what's happening with your own business or brand or product, and really think about what is appropriate and what makes sense. That is, I think, something that you can consider on a lot of different fronts. That's choice of wording when you're writing copy or looking at ad copy. This is not a time to do things like go viral or things like that. It's certainly something that you can look at from an image perspective as well. We focus a lot on words, but the images are a big deal as well. There's a lot of sensitivity right now around gatherings, groups, personal contact, those sorts of things. That's something to think about. And also just, what is the appropriate sort of level of sales pitch to be taking right now? Like what is your product and how does it fit into a person's life? So are you still really an essential product where it makes sense and it feels right that you're still talking about the benefits that you can offer because people are going to purchase it? Or are you in one of those spaces that's like, this is not really something that people are doing right now, but you can still be communicating and, maintaining that audience, maintaining that loyalty for the day when those behaviors come back.
And I think there have been some companies that have handled that very well and have very much adjusted their messaging and their ads and the imagery that they use. And I think one of those being, and we have had a discussion on this before, and that Jeep has done a very good job with their campaign of hashtag stay off the road. Because you would think as a company that sells cars that, and one that's like a little bit more on off-roading, like that's kind of like the core of their product, you would think that they would want more people to be on the road. But knowing that this is not a time for people to be out and about, you give that message of stay off the road. And the view from what you will see will soon be again once you're patient enough for everything to go back to what it may be.
Yeah, I think the Jeep campaign is a great example because it really does show them adjusting to what's going on around them. It would be easy for Jeep, like you said, they do have this sort of off-roading, part of their identity. So really it would have been easy for them to try and, take that tack of go out into the outdoors, buy a Jeep and get out into the outdoors away from people. But they've really been very upfront about recognizing, it's not really about selling you a car right now. It is about continuing to build that awareness and the brand loyalty and equity that they have in Jeep and encouraging people to stay home, stay safe. Something that they also did as a part of that campaign was to adapt their Super Bowl ad, which was wildly popular. If everybody remembers the Groundhog Day Super Bowl ad with Bill Murray. Which suddenly now has a whole new meaning for Groundhog Day. And they actually adapted that spot and have re-released it as like we understand that every day is starting to look the same, which it certainly is for a lot of people. But that was a great way for them to still be really creative, do something that feels very authentic to their brand, that is a little bit lighthearted in tone, but still very appropriate,
Yeah, absolutely. And in that same vein, you kind of highlighted this with speaking on imagery and messaging of like physical contact and physical touch is not really something that's encouraged right now. So looking into KFC and what they've put out from, their usual slogan of finger looking good, you may not want to lick your fingers right now. It's not really encouraged right now. And so taking a spin on that of like, this is, while it's usually their slogan, they understand that it's not appropriate for this time. They're being sensitive to everything that's going on and that you don't want to have one that insist on you putting fingers in your mouth when you're told to keep your hands away from your face.
Yeah, KFC had been working on some creative that they had shown a little bit and made public a little bit that was a TV campaign that was actually centered on people licking their fingers because it was finger licking good. And I think they've chosen to pull all of that in light of the situation wisely. I think obviously this is not a time for finger licking.
Right.
And, they're just one of the big brands that's done that. I read also, Hershey's has a lot of these very warm, heartwarming commercials out there that we've seen people sharing chocolate bars and things like that. And they had also announced that they've, pulled back on any of their ads that show physical contact, that show people hugging or handshakes or things like that, and instead have sort of pivoted to creative that is focused just on like the chocolate bars, the product itself, so that they're sort of honoring that sensitivity around personal contact, but still, communicating their message and getting their chocolate out there, because I think we can all agree that chocolate is essential. So
I think so too. And I think it's interesting to learn what we kind of found, believable back, like finger licking good, how we just accepted that, like when in reality it was like, who wants to keep licking their fingers now in light of all, even before this, like it wasn't really a good idea to lick your fingers in the first place. Kind of brings light to many things concerning that we haven't thought of before.
I think there are a lot of things that will go, wow, was that ever really a good idea? Or certainly, I think a lot of the changes to lifestyle and perceptions, the way we think about things are probably likely to stick with us for a while,
right?
Even after the worst of this crisis has passed.
Talk from a be strategic standpoint. I think a lot of people are having to reevaluate their communication plans and how they've once looked at it maybe every year, or they looked at it quarterly. They're now having to look at it daily.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a strategic standpoint, I think, this is really the time to kind of go back to fundamentals in terms of your marketing strategy and be really thinking through, what your product is, how you're delivering it to people, what is the value that you're really offering to people, and how can you adjust your strategy maybe in how you deliver your product, how you sell your product, is certainly something to think about. I think, we've all kind of seen this at work in the restaurant industry, which obviously has just been so hard hit by this crisis, but we've seen some restaurants and owners that have been able to really successfully pivot their business to, being centered now on takeout, on curbside, on to go, which may have just been sort of ancillary offerings for them before this.
Right.
And people who've been able to do that really effectively and communicate it really effectively, who've even, changed up their menus maybe, as takeout now becomes like the central offering for things. We've seen a lot of these menus come out that are family meals or group meals or party packs or things that are kind of designed, and aimed at feeding a household, since that's sort of the new reality. These are becoming parts of everyday life and family life, and changing the way people are interacting with that. And so I think we've seen some folks in that industry that have been able to, adapt very quickly and understand very quickly what it is that they're able to offer people effectively in this environment, and try to keep moving forward on that front.
Yeah, I think more now than ever that people are thinking to go first rather than dine in first. And then people are also wanting to, while more people are cooking from home, they also want to make sure that they're still giving back to the community in any type of way. So with that being to go, you want to like give back maybe like 3 days a week or whatever it may be. And making sure that your company and your brand has adapted to keep up with those changes.
Clearly, you can adapt your product offering and how you're delivering that to people. You've got to be able to communicate with people effectively. And so that's something to think about from a strategic standpoint. What kind of, communications mix have you had up to this point? And it may not be the right one now. It may not align with where people are now. You've really got to think about where your customers are, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis now, which in a lot of cases probably looks a lot like what we're doing right now and involves a screen.
Yeah.
People are definitely online, and that's always been true, always in recent history been true, that the digital marketing realm is obviously a very powerful one for a range of products, but it is even more true and becoming more true every day of the situation as it goes on. I've read a few research studies floating around out there that have said, online activity is just sort of steadily climbing, whereas in-store visits and business conducted are down by like 90% across the US. So that is just a huge landscape shift in terms of how you need to talk to people and conduct business with people. So, now websites really take center stage, and making sure that you have a website that can be easily found, that communicates what you need it to communicate, that can sell product for you or let people place orders or connect with the customers the way that you need to. Social media obviously has been huge. People are spending a lot more time on social media under these new circumstances. I think Facebook and Instagram had said that engagement on their platforms was up by like 60%. If you're a business or a brand that really hasn't been on social media, or maybe has thought of social media as just like that, oh yeah, I have a Facebook page or whatever, but you haven't really spent a lot of time there, that now is a critical communication opportunity to meet these audiences where they are.
Right, you're reaching an entire new audience and having your brand exposed to a lot more eyes than ever before. So you need to take advantage and take on that opportunity that's put in front of you.
Yeah, I think digital is, like I said, it's been important for a number of years and has been steadily growing in importance, but this has really been a huge shift in people spending so much time there. And all indications are that people are getting comfortable with that and getting more and more comfortable with that. So this is not necessarily a short-term issue for this crisis or for any crisis. This is more, may well be a shift in the way that people live and the way that people conduct business. They're becoming more comfortable with shopping for things online, doing things online that maybe they weren't doing before. And a lot of those habits are likely to stick with us for the longer haul,
Right. Digital is meant to grow. It's not meant to be limited.
Absolutely. Whether that's a pandemic or whether that's an economic event or a market event or something, there are a lot of different things, unfortunately, that can happen that really cause the landscape to shift around you. And you've got to be ready to, with a strategy to adapt to those changes that are taking place around you, to still communicate with the people you need to communicate with and make things happen. Because one thing that I think, talking about the housing industry in terms of being instructive perhaps as to what it went through in the housing crisis is that a lot of these things, it's not about going back to normal one day. There's probably not a day that we're going to say, okay, now we flip the switch and everything goes back to the way it was. This is really about new normal and, what is business going to look like going forward?
Exactly. Which we can move into be smart. So be smart, it kind of folds into both of those be sensitive and be strategic approaches. And being smart means making sure that you have taken into account both ways to be sensitive in your message and creativity and being strategic in your creativity and your messaging and make sure it's still applied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think be smart we list last, but certainly not least, because hopefully it's a core element of everything that you have done in the other two categories. One good piece of news here is that we've talked a lot about digital marketing and the move to digital and, needing to be in that space. And digital marketing actually adapts very well to being smart. As a business or a marketer right now, obviously you want to make sure that you're spending dollars wisely or that you're communicating wisely, that you're getting where those messages are getting where they need to go, and that you're connecting with the right people. And the good news is that digital marketing is very powerful on that front in terms of it can be very targeted. It's very, very trackable. It's very cost effective. You can get really good, fast feedback in terms of how you're doing, who you're reaching, and whether or not that's converting into what you need it to do for your business. and then you're able to adjust accordingly.
And you get down even with the feedback and the data that you can collect because of digital and all the tracking that's held within that. You can get down to the nitty gritty of like, are you being smart in the time that you're posting?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you looking at day posting and night posting? What's acceptable to the audience that you're pushing your content out to? So it's things as small as that you have to now consider in being smart and making sure that it's applied in the right way into the right audience at the right time.
Yeah, certainly on social media, posting times and patterns, like when people are active on different platforms, that has certainly changed as everyone's lifestyles have shifted very radically, staying at home and, a lot of people working from home and not having commute times, not moving around as much. That has really changed things like mobile ad targeting, when you don't have people traveling or moving around as much as they have. That's definitely something to consider. Keyword search behavior has been affected and what people are searching for, what they're looking for, what that context is. So, there's a lot of data points that you can glean from your digital marketing efforts from what you've been doing up to this point and see, how those are changing. The key to all of that, of course, really is that you're doing this on a consistent basis, right? There's not a lot of room right now for a marketing plan that's on autopilot and you just set it and go. You've got to be sort of on top of those numbers, on top of those results and what's happening, and then adapting your messaging and your strategy accordingly based on what the market is telling you.
Right. And I think that's something we've definitely taken and applied with our own clients who range from the housing industry to restaurant industry. We've had to really take and reevaluate what we had planned at maybe the beginning of the year or right before work from home was implemented. We've had to take it and reevaluate and kind of come together on a new creative process, both in messaging and imagery, branding, the whole 9 yards, and really apply it to make sure that we're being smart with what we're putting out.
Yeah, certainly we have been reviewing and re-reviewing strategies and plans even more than we do in the past. Obviously, it's something that we always are watching these metrics, but there has been a lot more change going on. You can see trends emerging a lot more quickly in the way people's behavior is changing, in sort of what's resonating with people and what's not. I think those kinds of messaging and communication elements are changing pretty rapidly too, as the situation itself has changed, obviously. When we went into this sort of shelter in place, work from home type of environment, nobody really knew how long it was going to last or what was really going to happen. And as the larger situation evolves, the people's reactions to what they're reading, to communications that are out there, their level of sensitivity to different things, is changing with that situation. So it's really something that just has to be managed very actively to make sure that, the communications you're putting out there are, appropriate and effective.
We've really touched on using these approaches during the midst of the pandemic and how people are adapting to a more, shelter in place, social distancing, work from home environment. But as companies start to reopen, as restaurants start to reopen, we're moving forward to like a more sensitive time because you have to straddle a line of like, well, we need to reopen, but we want to make sure that we're being safe for others. So what do you think is kind of the messaging that needs to take place when moving forward with kind of reopening the economy, but also not going back to exactly what we once were? Like you said, it's a new normal.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a new normal for everybody. And what that looks like is going to depend on who you are or what your business or your brand is and who your customers are and the way that you're going to be able to communicate that with them. Certainly there's a fine line to walk between, wanting this desire that all of us have on some level to just like have business as usual, like let's just go back to what we were doing, balanced out by, I think, the realization on most everyone's part that that's not really the reality of what's going to happen here. So trying to figure out what does new normal look like and communicate that effectively to people, particularly for businesses that have, more personal contact or that depend on that really. Being able to communicate what they're doing from a safety perspective is going to be critical in terms of sort of building people's confidence. back up in those sorts of things. And it's probably going to take some time and it's going to evolve over time, But I think that a lot of those things are also likely to stick with us for the longer term. Some of this type of messaging that we're seeing and digital marketing initiatives that we're seeing are likely to continue long beyond this. And I think that's going to be something really interesting that we're going to be watching on the marketing front in terms of, because people have become so comfortable in the digital space and we're sort of delivering product and delivering messages in this space like never before, and doing that at a different level than ever before and doing so much more virtually than a lot of people would have been comfortable with before. How do you take some of the elements that were maybe part of your in-person identity, if you're one of these businesses that, is used to flinging open the front door and welcoming people in? How do you take some of that warmth or that personality or those experiences, and sort of infuse your digital presence with those same experiences and feelings?
Because I think from a standpoint that we keep reiterating is that a key component and a core to that we will be moving towards or already in is digital. And so just because maybe restaurants are reopening, stores are reopening, doesn't mean that digital aspect needs to now be taken back. It needs to still remain in place so that those options of to-go, curbside, delivery are still a part of your branding and messaging that people are still comfortable enough to use. Even if you are reopening and people are welcome to come into your store with safety precautions, digital still needs to be that core element within your whole entire communications plan.
Yeah, I think we're just going to find that a lot of people are going to start taking advantage of that a lot more than they had in the past. And in the near term, that's probably going to be an even larger segment of people that maybe just aren't comfortable venturing out yet, even as businesses start to open their doors again. I'm sure, that some people are going to be more hesitant to venture out. They're going to stay in those online spaces. And it really is, an opportunity for a business or brand to sort of evolve and adapt along with the customers and the audience that you're trying to talk to, and meet them where they are in those efforts, be there with them. And I think long term, being able to do that effectively is just going to build, more loyalty for those brands that do it well and that are able to connect authentically with people in that environment.
Right. And I think someone who's already been doing this very well, even before the start of the pandemic, but even more so now, is Chick-fil-A, and how they've really taken digital and allowed it to master them through the drive-through and mobile orders and deliveries. And then also making sure that you're still met with their warm personality that takes place. So whether that be like the cow outside dressed up, greeting you at your car through the drive-through, their points and awards system that you can use to, get free food, get free rewards, things of that nature. I feel like they really taken on digital, applied it well, and now they're really set for this pandemic that's taken place that has allowed them to continue to be a company that has great messaging and have great products and perform well during a trying time like this.
Yeah, I think they had already built this digital presence with the app and everything like that feels great, that works well, which is obviously really important for something like that. But it feels like their brand, it has their personality and their voice, pulled all the way through that. And this has been, they've been able now to really leverage that during this time when it had to become central. I do think we're going to see some of those brands or businesses where maybe digital was a sideline thought before, it's going to move more into that center stage forefront thought, that having that digital front door is going to be just as important as your physical storefront.
Absolutely. And I think moving into the future and what could take place with a new normal, as I think a lot of people are, as we see a trying time for maybe mom and pop shops, there are smaller businesses that are kind of having a harder time than the bigger franchises that's going on right now. I think a lot of people are going to see, while being, locked in their houses, so to speak, taking on these new, hobbies that allows them to create. And then you can see more online stores taking place too. So you have a digital experience from those who have already been in business and have to transition to this, where you'll see also an influx of new business on websites because people have created this new business from within their homes that can then be taken to digital as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, adversity can be the birth of creativity in a lot of ways. And I think we've seen a lot of that in this situation where we've seen some, really creative ways that people have, whether it's adapting their business or whether it's people that have been really creative in terms of, trying to help, trying to connect with other people and just kind of stay connected on a human level. We've seen that sort of creativity emerge. So I hope that that's something that we continue to kind of see and grow. Obviously, people have had a lot of time maybe on their hands to be inspired about something creative that they can do to help or contribute, or maybe something that they've always wanted to pursue. So hopefully that is, that's a tiny piece of positive that we could carry forward from this.
Because you are still, you're seeing that contribution to more audiences on social media and on web and online and using it that you can then target your brand to as well. So it's just a continuous everyday like influx of new ideas, new developments, but digital kind of still being that core to all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the digital environment is just becoming more and more real life environment. And, this is a time for brands, I think, and marketers to really consider the communication strategies in that space. We have a tendency at times to want to talk at people about what we're selling or what we're doing instead of sort of engaging with people. And the increased usage that we're seeing in those spaces, a lot of that is, on Facebook and Instagram, is these huge engagement numbers. And that's people that are engaged in conversation and interaction in a real and authentic way. And I think that's going to be key for people on the marketing side to be able to be a part of those dialogues and conversations, to encourage that dialogue with their customers, to actually engage people in a meaningful way that feels real and authentic to their brand. And that would turn out to be a very powerful thing for those that are able to do it well.
Absolutely. Do you have any final thoughts on what could come for the future in messaging and branding and applying these three approaches?
Like I said, I think it's just an ongoing effort is, the takeaway. And the pandemic crisis has sort of brought these things to the forefront and really put a spotlight on things that have always been fundamentally true and always should be fundamentally true about your marketing effort and your marketing strategy. You should always be trying to be sensitive to your environment and to the environment that your audience is living in and understanding things from their perspective and their point of view. You should always be strategic in the tools and the planning that you're using, and make sure that those are targeted to the people that you're actually trying to talk to. And you should hopefully always be smart in that, you're using the feedback that the market is giving you and you're adjusting accordingly and coming up with new ways that you can evolve and adapt, because I think that's what, can really help businesses and brands to, not just survive, but thrive and really be evergreen, because they're able to, experience these things for better or worse, wherever the future takes us, along with the people that they're, trying to connect with from a marketing perspective, and, build real engagement and real relationships with those people that turn out to be meaningful in a very real way, and also from a business perspective.
Absolutely. And we actually speak more on these topics, even more so in depth for social media and website on our blog for ClementineCreativeAgency.com. On our Fresh In tab, you'll see 4 blog posts that kind of speak to everything that's going on right now and how to market in a COVID-19 world when it comes to making sure people are at the forefront and being sensitive, strategic, and smart in allowing those people to be of value to you, and kind of reevaluating your own communication plan. And then what it can mean for you from a social media website development standpoint and all of that. So Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I think we can hopefully take the opportunity to sort of refocus and, take that as a positive from the situation, whatever we can learn, and just keep being creative and being consistent. And hopefully some of these ideas that we have put out there will be helpful for people out there that are trying to navigate their own way.
Right, just because as everything else is adapting day to day, marketing has to as well. So anything that we can do to be on the other side of that and be more pioneers than, trying to catch up and adapt would be a better situation for all.
Yep, that's the way to be.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.